It's the Raw Meat Podcast, the most mediocre wrestling podcast on the internet. With the smart Greg Adams, the nature boy Jay Watley, and the hardcore icon Puff.
It is the Raw Meat Podcast. Greg Adams alone for right now, but it looks like, if he can make it in here with that pizza in his arms. Nature Boy Jay Watley coming in. Let me see. All right, that mic. We are going to podcast.
Hey.
I didn't know if I was going to do it by myself.
I'm all alone. There's no. Well, you are going to do it by yourself because I got to eat this delicious Domino's pizza.
That's free plug. That's fine. You go ahead and eat that. I'll just lob some questions your way.
Yeah, man, just do that.
As we have a little conversation.
People like listening to other people eat, don't they?
I know. It's fantastic. It is the Raw Meat Podcast, and it's been a little while since we sat down to do one of these because we've been dealing with technical difficulties, more vacation time. It's weird that our personal lives, people leave town and have vacations and
We
stuff.
have personal lives?
A little bit. Like Puff right now. Puff would normally be joining us.
Yeah,
but
where the hell is he?
Well, today is actually his birthday.
Oh.
So aside from getting a bunch of WWE memes posted to his Facebook page, he is also out actually enjoying his life on his birthday.
Well,
so
good for him. Finally 45.
45 years old, a spry 45, if I do say so myself. But it has been a while since we podcasted. Basically, the last time that we got to talk was a bunch of me gloating about winning the predictions for Money in the Bank, and a bunch of you coming up with excuses as to why you should have won.
You know what that reminds me? Something just came up.
What? Okay.
Roll out. Good talk. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to sit.
You mean you got to leave right now?
I got things going on today.
Okay, I thought you actually had like some news or something to pass along, because there was some big news between that point of us last podcasting and now. Roman Reigns being suspended 30 days for a wellness policy violation.
Wow.
I'm kind of glad that we actually had a bunch of time before we started talking about it, because...
Well, right when it happened, we had all those questions.
Yeah.
Does that mean the triple threat isn't happening? Is that why he lost the belt at Money in the Bank? Is that why Dean won? Did they even know about it? And now we have a lot of those answers.
We have speculation, and when it comes from guys like Dave Meltzer, you have a pretty good idea that it's true. So what we do know, gathering from those sources, because, by the way, this was not a subject that got a lot of airtime on SmackDown last week.
Oh, no.
So it's not anything that we have had in story context explained to us yet. So we'll still have to wait until tonight to get a lot of the answers. But Meltzer has said they knew about it prior to the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Now, how did that affect the outcomes? My guess would be that that's probably the reason why Rollins won the belt before it was cashed in. Now, it's a nice little thing for us all to say, wow, in one night, all three members of the Shield held the belt within like a 2-minute period of time. But I think it had more to do with, okay, what's our out on this going to be if Roman just has to disappear? To me, the out would have been he doesn't have a rematch, because the rematch would have gone against Rollins. Rollins has a rematch against Dean.
Right.
So if the idea was to drop the triple threat, then you could have had Rollins claim the rematch against Ambrose, and that would just be your BattleGround headliner.
Yeah. Good headliner.
But they're still forcing the triple threat.
Yeah, they are. They announced even today, as late as today, their Raw preview. They teased it, I would say, at least 4 times during that whole article about this triple threat, and even named Roman Reigns. So they're definitely not going away from it.
Well, that has to be the way that you kind of have to tackle this head on.
Yeah.
Because they've already made the announcement. They went ahead and did it as WWE. I know for a long time now they've had this... They've had this habit of giving the information and the news break to someplace like Variety or Entertainment Tonight or ESPN or Fox Sports. This time they kept it in-house. They are the ones that made the announcement. They posted it. So they're trying to tackle this head on, it seems.
Yeah.
Which means that tonight we'll probably get something.
Surely an announcement's made tonight. Of course, right when it happened, we were like, are they going to say he's injured? But then again, there's no way they can do that now when their own properties, their own Twitter, their own website, WWE has stated that he's suspended for the wellness program. So I don't think you can say he's injured. I think you just got to say what it is.
Which is actually brilliant. Well, I don't know if they ever address specifically what it is unless he does.
He's got to come back healed, though.
Right, that's the only way that this works. That's a whole nother story, and I don't know how much we really want to get into that because there's one more big bump in the road that this causes. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the heel turn possibility now.
Yes.
In a little bit, but the big bump in the road that this causes is the draft. The draft is going to happen on the 19th. His suspension is up on the 21st, which makes him eligible for BattleGround on the 24th, but he's not going to be on site for the draft in any way. So now he has to still be drafted.
Yeah.
They can't get around that. And how do you celebrate that draft pick when you've got a guy who's going to be he's suspended while you draft him?
Very weird.
Unless there's now... When did WWE know that he was getting suspended? When did the suspension actually take place? If we take it as the suspension happened the day that we were told about it, then it's not until the 21st that he's up.
Yeah.
However, if they retroactively set up that suspension, which I don't know how you do.
Me either.
Because he was there on Monday, he was there on Sunday. But if there's some kind of legal way that they can maneuver this...
We find out on Monday? No.
We found out on Tuesday. It was Tuesday before SmackDown was taped.
Man, this is...
So if you could retroactively say the failed test happened at a live event on Friday, but you can't say that he was suspended on that day because he performed.
Yeah.
So there might be some kind of weird wiggle room that they can figure something out. But
I wouldn't be surprised if they just drafted him business as usual, the same way they would if he was there.
Well, the way that I hope that the draft goes is that there's actually... Now, they're probably going to do this where SmackDown is going on and there are actually matches taking place. But what I would prefer to have happen, ESPN style, both podiums at the top of the ramp.
Me too.
You have... somebody hosting the draft as the commissioner. I mean, you have...
Jerry Lawler. Oh.
No, there's that too. But you have somebody at the top of the ramp hosting it like Roger Goodell would, and you have Stephanie and Shane both at the podiums, as long as they are the general managers of the respective brands.
I think we can bank on that, right?
I hope so.
We can bank on it.
Again, this all goes back to my bitch that I've had for the past 3 or 4 weeks, where they just need to give us the parameters of the game in which we are playing.
Let's go.
If we know the rules, then we can have a lot of fun speculating and setting this up. But at this point, without knowing who's where and what, just telling us the date of the draft and there's going to be a draft has immediately made this, it's fast-tracked this. So many more people are talking about it. Now, if tonight they tell us who the general managers are going to be, now we fast-track a conversation about who the number 1 draft pick is.
Yeah.
And how do these draft picks seed out? Because I've seen some fantasy drafts so far, and from publications online that I respect, and I've looked at them and gone, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
To me, in my mind, the way that this plays out, none of these fantasy drafts make sense. Because you have guys like Brock Lesnar getting picked number 1 overall in some of these. Do you, if you were going to write, because again, this isn't an actual draft, this is a story that's being written.
Right.
Do you write a guy like Brock Lesnar into the number 1 spot knowing full well that he's got 6 matches left on his career contract?
Yeah, that's tough, man. But I mean, he's the cover boy now too.
Yeah, that man.
I don't know. It depends on how they still view him. You know.
Side note.
Yeah.
I could not be less excited about the video game selling point right now being a retired guy and a part-timer.
There you go.
Like, those two things don't excite me any. But back to what you were saying. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. I'm saying, it all kind of goes back to me and Puff's argument of, who's a bigger draw right now in the WWE, Brock Lesnar or the New Day. It all depends on how the WWE is seeing him right now. If they're seeing him as their biggest draw, if they're seeing him as show up 6 matches a year, it's going to be the biggest draw. If they see him like that, then I could see it. But me personally, no. If I was writing, absolutely not. Why would I want that? But it's all about how they view him at this moment.
Well, the difficulty in...
If they view him as their top 1 or top 2 stars, then yeah, he's going to go first.
And like what we discussed when you were having the dialogue over who's bigger, New Day or Brock Lesnar, for something like WrestleMania, clearly Brock Lesnar is bigger because you're going mainstream at this point.
Yeah.
But if you're attracting the mainstream to your draft and your weekly product and you want to put Brock Lesnar out there as the face, he better be showing up.
Yeah, he better be there. No
because
doubt.
if I'm a non-hardcore wrestling
doubt.
fan in the mainstream and you're pitching me Brock Lesnar and I tune in to see Brock Lesnar and go for 3 hours with only seeing vignettes or taped, I don't see him come out.
I'm with you, bro.
You're dead to me from that point on. So I don't know if he ends up. I think it would be very clever to ignore his existence for the draft buildup. Nobody says his name. Nothing comes up. Everyone forgets he exists.
Well, but they'll say his name because he's the cover guy. So they'll be talking about that this whole time. He'll probably show up for the big cover reveal, right? Don't they do that every year?
I would like it better. And I don't know if they'd pay him for that because remember, his time is valuable.
No, I know that. I'm saying Stone Cold showed up on a Raw last year to unveil the cover, and Cena the year before.
But neither of them were preparing for a UFC battle either.
Yeah,
that's something in there. But what I think would be the greatest, and this is, I want to package all of these. I'm going to make a demo tape of me and all of my predictions like this and my writing style and the way that I would do it.
Just pour.
And I'm going to package it and I'm going to ship it off there and maybe I'll get a job in Connecticut.
Yeah, it'll go in their junk folder.
But the way that I would write this out is that nobody mentions Brock. Nobody involved in the draft. None of the general managers, none of the top talent. Nobody talks about Brock. Everyone forgets about him until the last pick for Raw in the draft.
So you're saying he's Mr. Irrelevant? Huh?
He's the one that nobody's considering, nobody's thinking about anymore. We're seeing flashes on the screen of some NXT guys like Mojo Rawley's still on the board.
Yeah,
I want it set up like the NFL, where you've got.
What about like legends coming out to do picks?
That'd be cool too.
That'd be cool. Get Mick Foley out there.
If you actually had like little groups, like Shane's guys, and Stephanie's guys, and you had those people come and make some picks.
Pretty cool.
But like if you have Michael Cole and David Otunga and Byron Saxton and JBL all down there doing like the draft commentating, and they have like pre-roll packages on the guys, and they have their debut and all the information. Treat it like the draft.
Good.
That would be awesome. But if you have all that going on and you've got all those commentators, because remember again, pre-written, so you know to tell all of them, don't mention Brock. We're going to lead everything away from Brock. You're talking about Mojo Rawley. You're talking about Austin Aries if he's not drafted at this point. You're talking about all of these potential NXT guys completely diverting everyone's attention. And then Steph or Shane, whoever's got the Raw brand, smirks, steps up to the microphone, and drops the bombshell of this brand drafts Brock Lesnar.
That'd be great.
And everyone just loses it. Music hits, he comes out, what the hell?
I just think it's going to be so hard for him not to be the topic of discussion now. This will be the first Raw since they announced that he'd be on the cover of their game.
Well, but the game's also got a little while.
Oh, I know it. No,
Goldberg didn't show up when they did the Goldberg.
Goldberg will show up though.
I'm
every pre-order bonus has showed up on television.
I distanced myself the first time that Puff said he's showing up, and then I distanced myself.
Yeah, but Puff don't know anything.
Hey, he knew the Empress
Don't
Asylum
talk
was
to me
happening.
about that. He didn't know nothing. And by the way, if Roman Reigns would have passed the damn P test, then my predictions are 100% accurate on Money in the Bank. So really, I think that whole match should be void now because clearly he was going to win until he.
I don't know that it was clear that he was going to win. I think it was probably clear that Seth was going to walk out with it, and you were going to see a.
Wrong.
No. Prior to that, let's go down this road. Let's do this. I was trying to avoid doing this, but I want to do this now.
Let's do it.
So, if Roman is clear, if there's no drug situation,
Yeah.
Seth wins the belt.
Hell no.
Then no, okay.
I'm sorry.
See if this sounds entertaining to you. If you would tune in for this every week, you have Seth now with the belt.
Yes.
You have Roman with a rematch. He wants the belt back. You have Dean walking around with that damn briefcase and that crazy look in his eye.
Yeah.
So now you've got Seth looking two different directions with no more authority backup.
I'd love that, man.
That would make for great TV all the way through SummerSlam. BattleGround wouldn't have your triple threat. BattleGround would have your rematch between Roman and Seth with the threat of Dean cashing in at any minute. So then you have all of these Seth matches where Dean is showing up and just sitting. He's
Just
bringing the
being
hot
there,
dog cart again back down, and he's got the briefcase on the hot dog cart, and he just sits there and eats a hot dog watching the match. You always have the threat.
Yeah.
Then if there's ever a point where Seth goes to try and beat Dean up to like jump him in the back, then you have Roman protecting him because they're still boys.
Mm-hmm.
You could play that all the way into SummerSlam,
That would have been nice, man.
but we don't have that now. Now we have this triple threat with a guy who's off TV.
And is he going to be on TV at all before the pay-per-view?
No. I mean, the live SmackDown is the last TV before BattleGround, and it's on the 19th, Tuesday the 19th. His suspension ends on like Thursday or Friday, and then the pay-per-view on Sunday.
That's crazy.
So you're not going to see him on TV unless it's like pre-roll packages, vignettes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't exist.
Golly. But what are they? I know it's too early now, but what are they going to do in that triple threat match? What can they do? Also worth noting, back to the draft though, your boy Dean Ambrose, there's no way that he goes 1 or 2, right? The world heavyweight champion, there's no way. What do you think?
Whoever holds the belt
Has to go early, right?
the day of the draft is your number 1 pick.
I just can't imagine somebody picking Dean Ambrose first. I just
Dean
can't
Ambrose
imagine that.
will be your number 1 pick. Now, I want to do a fantasy draft podcast.
No, I'm saying that I agree that that's what we'll see, but I'm saying, like, personally, I just can't imagine.
So here's how it could easily play out, because some of the rumblings that we have heard say that they definitely want certain guys on certain shows. They definitely want Seth and Roman on Monday Night Raw. Even with Roman's transgressions, they still want that face on Raw.
Yeah.
I truly believe deep down, and I know there are some internet, just some of the dirt sheets and stuff saying that that John Cena is not being advertised for post-draft SmackDowns. Deep down, I do believe that the way that you get eyeballs on SmackDown right off the bat is you put John Cena there. So I still firmly believe whoever gets number 1, let's say hypothetically SmackDown has to get the number 1 pick now because they have to take Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose is on SmackDown. So if he has the title and is going to be the number 1 pick, SmackDown is where he goes. So I see SmackDown taking Ambrose 1. The return volley is Raw taking Seth Rollins.
All right.
Comes back to SmackDown where they draft John Cena. Goes back to Raw where they take Roman Reigns. Comes back to SmackDown where they take AJ Styles.
Yeah.
Goes back to Raw, and that's where it starts to get kind of dicey.
Sounds few, man.
And we don't know, but again, we don't know the rules, so we don't know how tag teams are going to be treated.
Yeah.
Because there was the speculation early on, they even did a little bit with New Day and Shane and Steph in the ring where they talked about tag teams could get split up.
Yeah.
I don't
no
constructively
way they split the New Day. No way.
But there's also no way that you're playing Connect 3 and whoever the other general manager in a logical standpoint wouldn't pluck one of those.
I'm with you on that. It's just woof.
The way that I think you get out of that, the way that I would like to see you get out of that is the tag team division is on SmackDown and the women's division is on Raw.
Oh.
So you don't have to draft female
but
wrestlers.
There's so many tag teams, man.
Really, there aren't right now.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on the last podcast.
There really aren't. There's 5 or 6. There's 5 or 6. There are 4 really good ones, but once you drop down from those 4 or 5, you have like 6 tag teams. Maybe 7 if you still count, or 8 if you count that Golden Truth Fandango.
You do. You count them, yeah.
All right, so you've got Club,
New Day, the
New
champions.
Day.
Yes, you got the Vaudevillains.
And you have Enzo and Cass, which, if you're going to split up a tag team, it's those ones.
Yeah, no doubt.
Then you have the Usos, you have the Dudleys. We're up to 6. Then you have Golden Truth, Fandango.
The Lucha Dragons.
Lucha Dragons, all right, so maybe you do have like 9. There are a lot of tag teams. But if you split up even 9, say you got 10.
Yeah.
If there are 10 tag teams and
We'll call it the primetime players or whatever their names are from the Alpha Males. Who are they? In
American Alpha.
God, lame.
So, okay, maybe there are enough, but now what do? Do you create a second set of tag team titles?
I don't think you can do that.
Because so you've got one division on one show that can fight for the tag team belts, and then on the other show you just have tag teams
Just people
fighting?
trying to fight for rank, man.
But we don't have, again, if we had information, if there was a ranking system. But if you start to allow the champions,
I think the champions should be on both shows.
no, that immediately cheapens the brand.
I like that though.
It immediately cheapens the brand.
Well, I think it cheapens the brand to not have the champions on.
That's why you create secondary champions. That's why you bring the big gold belt back and you put it on SmackDown.
Cheapen the big daddy?
No, not a bit.
Not at all.
No, I feel like you cheapen it more when you have this person on Monday night, now I don't have to watch Monday night because I can see him on Tuesday, or I don't have to watch Raw because I'm going to see this person on SmackDown. I don't have to watch SmackDown because I'm going to see him on Raw. And at some point, people are going to realize, well, honestly, the champion doesn't matter anyway because you're not going to see the belt defended on Raw or SmackDown. Now, maybe with the big gold belt, that would change because if I remember correctly, I wasn't watching heavily during the first brand split, but I seem to remember clips of that big gold belt being defended on SmackDowns.
Hey, man, that's the best belt in the history of wrestling.
It's the prettiest belt in the history of pro wrestling.
No doubt.
So if you
does Ric Flair still have that thing? Didn't Cena hand it to him or something? That's how they retired it? I
don't know. But it's easily brought back.
There's only one man that can bring that belt back.
No, we're not diving down this conversation.
There's only one man.
But that belt, I want to see that come back. I want to see the IC title. Yeah. I want to see the IC title exclusively on Raw. I want to see the US Championship exclusively on SmackDown. If you want to create a couple more, if you want to have a European champion back, and if you want to have a light heavyweight champion back, do that.
The Cruiserweight belt?
Cruiserweight belt could easily come back with the Cruiserweight Classic happening.
Yeah.
The winner of the Cruiserweight Classic has the belt and is now signed to WWE and will defend it on whichever show.
They have to be going that direction. I mean, you'd hope so.
I really, really, truly hope, because the more gold that you have on TV, the more the brass ring doesn't become imaginary anymore. The brass ring becomes real, and you can have these guys actually hold the belts. And that SmackDown title legitimized a lot of guys who otherwise would have been a mid-card guy.
I'm all for that. I want that.
Like Edge. Edge was a total mid-card guy. He had won the IC title however many times, tons of tag team champions. And he never won that big W belt, the one that was reserved over here for the bodybuilders.
Damn right.
He went and won the big gold belt, and it legitimized him.
Rey Mysterio
wins the big gold belt. Eddie Guerrero, big gold belt.
Alberto Del Rio,
big gold belt. Dolph Ziggler, big gold belt. Like that. Like, think about Dolph Ziggler right now. If he wasn't a world champion at one point in his career, he's probably gone. He's forgotten about.
I love that man.
And it's the fact that he has the credibility of being able to say, this guy was a world champion. And it was because of that belt, and it was because it was on SmackDown. And they were able to get away with some things. And I hope that that's what comes back. They get away with some stuff. They let some stuff slide. They do some crazy, creative ideas. And we see a good SmackDown product. Now, we're going to keep this one kind of short. The last thing that we should probably talk about is something that you already kind of went down the road of, is when Roman returns, who does Roman Reigns come back as?
Especially if they make it known on the air, on live television, on Raw, that he has been suspended for doing something like that, that immediately, especially the younger people that are watching, that immediately portrays him as a non-babyface, right? As soon as they say that he broke the rules, babyfaces don't break the rules, man.
Now,
they don't.
Couple of things at play. When Roman reacted to the crowd the way that he did on Monday night last week, which we now, according to Dave Meltzer and the internet, we believe that he and WWE knew at that moment that he was getting suspended the following morning. He snapped on the crowd in a way that we have not seen before. And I immediately texted Puff and I said, that was different. I thought that he finally just cracked himself.
Live on television.
And he finally had to say something to the crowd, because he turned and he treated them like it was, all you bros out there, just keep sipping your $8 beers and sit down for a second. Like, that's the real guy.
Oh, that's the Roman Reigns that can be very successful.
And everybody talks about, every successful wrestler talks about, they became successful when they took their own personality and turned it up to 11. And Roman Reigns' personality is that he's kind of he's a smarmy jerk. He's not a fun guy. He's better than everybody, and he knows it. That's the guy that could be very successful.
Oh, no doubt about it.
And there's you, if you're good enough at that, being a bad guy, you become a good guy again. That's the rule of the jungle.
Yeah.
Kevin Owens right now gets cheered quite a bit, even though he is one of the best. He's the second best bad guy that they currently have. The best bad guy is a guy that nobody ever cheers because he's so good at being bad, and that's The Miz. Nobody cheers The Miz.
You're trying to tell me that you think Kevin Owens is a better bad guy than Chris freaking Jericho?
Yes.
Chris Jericho is so good, man.
But Jericho is Jericho's story arc. 10 years ago, Jericho, suit and tie Jericho, better than Kevin Owens today.
You're right, though. The Miz is money.
But Kevin Owens, right?
Money.
Jericho right now is to the point where he's getting chance again. He's kind of over that roller coaster where he's no longer the evil heel. He's like the fun, cheeky heel. You stupid idiot. Stupid idiot chants start coming up. Like, that's where he's at in his career. I think Owens is more vile as a bad guy. There are people who will not cheer for him.
But if Roman Reigns comes out from his suspension, full-on heel and loving it, heel 24/7.
And it's also set up nicely for it, too.
Yeah, oh, totally. This could end up being the best thing that ever happened to him.
It's set up very nicely because the biggest of the baby faces has the championship right now. So if when he comes back, if whatever semblance of an authority there is, if it's Triple H, if it's Stephanie, whatever that authority is, Roman becomes their guy.
Yeah.
Roman becomes what Seth Rollins was 2 years ago.
Oh, and the champion's his boy. It sets up perfect.
And he takes the belt off his best friend.
Yeah, man. In like a dubious heelish way. Oh.
Dumps him out
on.
and just crushes him because triple threat rules, I believe. I don't think you can get disqualified for using a chair.
Isn't it no disqualification?
I believe
in
so.
Championship matches now?
No. That was, it was said once, but it really wasn't. Like, there was a double count out at some point on, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was said once, but I think it was for one match. But in this triple threat, you could actually have Roman Reigns just take apart, systematically dismantle Dean Ambrose with a steel chair. And you could have, like, Rollins feigning an injury and sitting there like big bug-eyed, like pushing himself away from Roman, like, dude, what did you just do?
Yeah. Oh, Dean Ambrose begging his boy to stop.
And then at some point, I mean,
it'd be great.
We've already had the match where Dean Ambrose can take however much pain that Brock Lesnar can give him. F5 on a pile of chairs and he still moves. What if Roman to the point gets Dean Ambrose where Dean Ambrose is not moving? The guy who likes pain isn't moving.
Yeah.
And Roman leaves him in the ring like that.
That'd be big, bro.
That establishes a couple of things. It establishes how big and bad Roman was when he was in the Shield. It brings that totally back to light. It makes him look like he could take on Brock Lesnar, which is not what, going into WrestleMania a year ago, nobody thought that it's not believable that Roman Reigns could beat Brock Lesnar, even though physically he's one of the only guys on the roster who looks like he could beat Brock Lesnar. It wasn't believable. If he unleashes and dismantles those two, now all of a sudden I think that guy he looks like he could beat, and the story says he could beat Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
So you could actually set up a Royal Rumble match with Reigns as belt over his head, authority figure, heel champion, white meat babyface Brock Lesnar. Everyone wants to see that match. If Roman Reigns is allowed to talk to the crowd the way that he wants to talk to the crowd, and everyone hates him, and everyone wants the gladiator Brock Lesnar to come in and destroy him, oh man,
that'd be tight. They have to do that though.
Why aren't they doing this?
How could they mess that up, man? How could they mess that up?
Well, because Roman sells shirts and Roman sells gloves. But what we learned is that Roman doesn't sell tickets.
Right.
When they did the research on the two tours that split off, the A Tour and the B Tour, A Tour led by Roman Reigns as the headliner, B Tour, Dean Ambrose is the headliner. Dean Ambrose's tour is selling as many tickets as Roman Reigns' tour is. That speaks volumes. So maybe Roman isn't as golden of a golden boy as they thought. We now know that he's not as golden of a golden boy because he got popped for the wellness. And it doesn't mean that forever Roman Reigns would be a heel, because Randy Orton has been popped for wellness.
Oh, yeah.
And Randy Orton eventually gets to come back, and he's the cool good guy.
Yeah.
Which is the edge that you would end up giving Roman Reigns after this.
I think so. I think they have to, man. Oh, and I'll be so upset if they don't. I'll be so upset.
It'll be... There are people, and I have heard them, who are wrestling fans who have written Roman Reigns off completely, permanently from now on. Women and children who will not cheer for him because they view him as a cheater. It might do him personally some good to come out and talk about what it was. Was it a supplement from GNC that he just didn't know about? Was it a prescription that was over 60 days old?
Did Jeff Hardy make a drop in Phoenix? He was there Monday, man. He was there.
If they tell us what it was, it will eliminate some of the people who are upset with him right now. Because there are some people who believe it could have been a steroid. There are some people who believe that it was a...
Yeah, I read it as steroids right off the bat. But of course, that's totally guessing. But you look at the guy, obviously, and it reads like it.
Now there are people who will hate him forever because of steroids. But there are people who will also say, oh, it's just steroids? I'm cool then. I'm back with him. Now, if we turn out it was a
Well, I don't think steroids are as big of a deal in a fixed, and it is what it. Wrestling is what it is. I think in a game like baseball or football, steroids are a much bigger deal.
Steroids
that gives you the advantage. Where in wrestling, if you have the pen and the paper on your side, you have the advantage.
Steroids.
Look at Ryback. You can have all the steroids you want.
Steroids, to me,
what advantage does it give a wrestler though?
The same advantage it gives everyone else. It gives you an ability to bounce back faster, which, like for pro wrestler or not pro wrestlers, for pro baseball players, pitchers were always more guilty than hitters. But what steroids allowed hitters to do was work out 3 times in a day instead of twice in a day, so they got bigger, where pitchers were using it as a recovery. So they would cycle through without lifting weights. You would never look at a pitcher, Scott Traxel, you would never look at that guy and say, like, oh, he's roiding, even though he's doing it more than Mark McGwire is, because it just allows him to throw 92 miles an hour 5 days a week, when without that bump, he's only touching 89 after the third day.
Though, that's a legitimate sport where your physical advantage is the difference between winning and losing.
And you could make the argument based on...
I'm not saying steroids not a big deal, but I'm saying that I think in the world of wrestling, it's less of a big deal.
I do not think steroids are a big deal, period, end of story. Steroids were a big problem in the 80s when people didn't understand what they were, didn't understand the use, and we didn't have a lot of doctors dealing with it. And pro football teams didn't have the doctors that they have today. To me, right now, steroids administered by a doctor and under the supervision of a medical professional, we both have kids. When our kids get sick, we take them to the hospital. They're administered a regimen of steroids to get them better. It's a medicine. We're not outlawing aspirin because we don't understand how it works. Steroids were outlawed at a time where we didn't understand what they were, and the medical community wasn't putting a lot of effort behind it. So you had guys in the back of Gold's gyms trying to pretend like they knew what was going on. Nowadays, you have doctors who specialize in anabolic steroids. And when it comes to like pro football teams and the doctors that the WWE has and UFC, those guys could, it's not anything that we're ever going to. People get cortisone shots all the time. How many times do you hear an NFL player get a cortisone shot? Cortisone's a steroid. They're getting administered steroids by team doctors, and it's okay.
So we're both in agreement, though, that if it is steroids, it's not that big of a deal.
A lot of people know, not a big deal. Now you do have a bunch of people who, if he gets popped for pot, cocaine, shrooms, peyote, insert illegal drug here, there are people who will write him off permanently forever. But there's also a bunch of people where if I find that out, whatever. Honestly, there's really nothing that upsets me that he could violate the wellness policy for. Like, I will treat him like, wow, you idiot. Like, that was not a good move when you're in the position you're in.
He got a Nazi symbol tattooed on his chest.
I don't think that falls under the wellness policy.
I mean, it's bodily wellness.
I really don't think that qualifies, but like,
maybe he got infected.
I
don't know. Maybe he took, I don't know, crazy.
There's not much that they could come out and say this is what he was popped for that would make me write the guy off.
Yeah, me either.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was something as simple as he has a prescription for Adderall and it lapsed over 60 days, much like Adam Rose, and it turns out he was under prescription and everything was kosher, but the paperwork wasn't solid.
Hopefully they let us know, man. I'm interested in knowing what it is,
Yeah.
But also that stops people from assuming on their own,
Which is something they should probably cut off.
I would think so.
I liked what Roman did on Twitter where he came out and owned it. That's a strong move. Now, does it play to the heel idea? No, it doesn't. But I think the heel idea like you said, this could be the best thing that ever happened for his career. Now, as for him personally, it kind of, cost him some cash, so that sucks.
Yep.
But at this point, I think he's going to make up for that cash.
I think it forced. Hopefully, I think it forced the move that the WWE had to make with him. Hopefully, it forced a heel turn.
That would be the best case scenario, the silver lining.
And if they don't turn him heel, I'm watching TNA from now on
for the next
6 months.
2 weeks that they're in business. That's yeah. I will not watch the brand that he is on. If he's on Raw, I will only watch SmackDown.
Done.
That's how it's going to be.
Wasn't in the last draft, didn't John Cena get drafted by SmackDown?
I don't know about the last one. I think in the first draft that they had, he was with SmackDown.
You know he got drafted by SmackDown. I didn't know if it was the last one or not.
Now, to me, and we can spend a lot of time on a future draft podcast because I really want to do that.
We'll have to. Yeah, no doubt.
But I think that would do a couple of things. It would legitimize the SmackDown brand right off the bat.
Especially if you got Shane McMahon on that, too. Shane McMahon on SmackDown will give you some eyes as well.
Yeah, that would.
The goal is just to make SmackDown formidable enough to go head-to-head with Raw and be a comparable product. Because right now it ain't, and you know that.
Oh, no, everyone. And God, I don't. Again, this will be on my demo package that I send out, time-stamped, where I sat and said they need to make it a separate brand and they need to make it live on Tuesday. Yeah. And then like 6 weeks later, boom, it's a separate brand and it's live on Tuesdays. Now, if you have Dean Ambrose with the belt, John Cena, AJ Styles, and throw Jericho maybe in there. If those guys are carrying your SmackDown banner, you've got mainstream eyes who want to see John Cena, and you have if you have like a Jericho over there and an AJ Styles over there, you've immediately got the internet community too. You have the IWO.
What does that give Raw? Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns,
and you got the mainstream, like your women and children, your families. New Day, depending on how they treat.
Yeah, man, that's weird. Golly, I bet that's so hard to write.
It'll be easier to write, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, once it splits. I'm talking about like getting it done. I bet that is so difficult to come up with a plan.
This would actually, if I were in that writing room, this would be the most exciting time that I think I ever had.
Yeah, agreed, exciting, but damn, I'm thinking about all it, because every decision you make now directly affects the decisions you will make 6 months from now that you haven't even thought about yet.
But that's how they they should be writing.
Crazy.
Every week.
Crazy.
Is that this change is going to affect this. The butterfly effect should be involved with everything they write. I honestly am to the point where I think that we should move away from the writers and we should get back to the bookers. Because if you look back to what bookers were doing when they were sitting down and saying, if this person does this in this match and then wins, they will have to do this in the future because that's how the story gets told. Now you have
Everybody Love Raymond writers.
Right, it's overscripted.
It's crazy.
And often what happens in the ring doesn't make sense with what happens backstage, or the push and positioning doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You only have 2 or 3 people cutting promos every week right now. You don't really have anybody coming out and cutting promos, and you don't really have a need for them to, because a lot of these guys are just kind of in limbo. They're not going for a belt. We don't know where they're at in the hierarchy of the belt. Are they chasing the U.S. championship, or are they chasing the IC? Then you have basically the guy who's in a rivalry with the belt holder, and the belt holder maybe cutting a promo a week.
Yeah.
I want to get back to some of that old Attitude Era stuff, and I know people talk about, I want the Attitude Era. Attitude Era is so great. It wasn't that the Attitude Era was great because there was swearing and sex and all of that stuff. The
sex was good, though.
The stories were more cohesive.
Yeah.
And it was more entertaining because you could follow along with it, where now they've oversimplified it to the point where it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't like it now, for sure.
And maybe we'll get one writing team and one booker that rises above the other, and you have what Paul Heyman built with SmackDown coming soon to a Tuesday night near you.
Let's go, man.
We'll see what happens
tonight. Are we podcasting tomorrow?
It depends on what happens tonight, I think. If tonight is a big day, we'll have a big podcast tomorrow. If not, we'll probably prep for a fantasy draft podcast later this week.
Woohoo!
So we'll see what tomorrow brings, but that's going to wrap it up for today. Make sure to subscribe, like us on Twitter, or like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, whatever the other things are.
Yeah, you can like us too.
Yeah,
Just personally like our Twitter account. That's cool.
You can like what we do.
Yeah.
And follow along for more episodes because we'll be back again with more of the Raw Meat Podcast.